This is DW News, live from Berlin. The US and Germany call for de-escalation from Russia after NATO says it's seen no proof of Moscow pulling back its forces from Ukraine's borders. President Biden and Chancellor Scholz discuss diplomatic efforts to avert a war on Europe's eastern doorstep. Also coming up, plans to return to normal after 2 years of the pandemic. Germany looks set to lift most COVID-19 restrictions next month. And Bring on the Bear, the Berlin Film Festival awards its top prize.
The 2022 Berlinale Golden Bear goes to the movie Alcaraz.
And Spanish director Carlos Simon's film about struggling Catalan farmers takes top honors. I'm Raheela Mahomed. Welcome to the program. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and US President Joe Biden have called on Russia to take real steps towards de-escalation on Ukraine's border after a phone call to discuss the crisis on Europe's eastern flank. Now, Russia announced that it's pulling back some of its forces from the border. But the United States and NATO say there are no signs of any Russian troop withdrawal yet. And while fears of Russian invasion of Ukraine on Wednesday did not materialize, the United States and its allies maintain that the threat remains high. Well, DW's Washington Bureau Chief Ines Pohl is following all the latest developments. Now, the US President spoke to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz a short while ago. What more do we know about that conversation?
Well, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and US President Biden see little progress in the border area, Raheela, with Ukraine. Both politicians agreed that the risk of further military aggression by Russia is actually still very high. Both said that the highest vigilance is required and that a significant withdrawal of Russian troops has not been observed so far. So the opposite of what President Putin is saying. They agree on that the situation in the border area is still extremely serious.
Yeah, there is clearly confusing messaging, with Russia saying it's pulling back its troops, NATO and the US saying that's not really the case. Here's the latest press conference from the State Department spokesperson, Ned Price.
To be very, very clear, we have not seen that. In fact, we have seen the opposite in recent weeks and even in recent days. More Russian forces, not fewer, are at the border, and they are moving, concerningly, into fighting positions. This is cause for profound concern.
So, Ines, what are we to read into this?
Well, Raheela, we all know that the first victim in a war is always the truth. So what we are experiencing right now is kind of an info war being at full force. In that regard, the statement of President Biden is also a kind of a strategic reply to the information Putin wants to spread by saying he's pulling troops back. So there is no doubt here that Russia is the aggressor and that Vladimir Putin is threatening Ukraine. But I think we also have to keep in mind that NATO is also using this conflict to underline its importance, especially after the Trump years when the alliance was facing less and less support from the American government. I'm sure you remember the threats of Donald Trump to actually leave the alliance.
And NATO says it's considering strengthening its eastern flank. Did Biden ask Scholz to deploy more troops to the region?
Well, Biden wants to give, first of all, Ukraine the capability to really strike back if necessary, but without having American troops getting engaged in armed combat. This is very important for our international audience to keep in mind, that politically the American president does not have any appetite to enter a ground war with Russia. But no doubt, if NATO really is going to send new combat units in Central or to Central and Southeastern Europe, something as he will expect Germany and he will expect from Chancellor Olaf Scholz to support NATO in many ways.
DW's Ines Pohl in Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you so much. Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged his citizens to come together in solidarity as millions face the threat of a Russian invasion. In a Day of Unity address, he vowed Ukraine would fight back against any Russian aggression.
A show of national pride as Russian troops remain on the border. The Ukrainian president called for a day of unity, encouraging people to come together.
We are all united by our wish to live in peace, to live a happy life with our families, parents and kids. We have the full right to all of this because we are at home here in Ukraine.
Many joined marches to show their solidarity. I think we all need to gather at such times so as not to forget that we are the only united. We need to go out in the street on such days, especially amid this political situation. I don't think the Russians are going to withdraw. I don't have faith in Biden's promises. The best way to protect ourselves is to stay united as one country. Zelensky is keeping his troops united by attending military drills in Rivne, near the Belarusian border, where soldiers continue to prepare for a potential attack. Despite the show of force, Ukraine is calling for more support from NATO and Western allies. For us, the support of Western countries is much needed and important. And the weapons, ammunition and protective equipment are enhancing our defence capacities. They enable us to react to threats effectively. On the day that the US warned of an invasion, DW correspondent Matthias Bullinger is reporting from where the drills are being staged.
It is, of course, no coincidence that these drills are happening on the day where many Western services have predicted an incursion. Ukraine is now making the most of the attention it is getting.
The people of Ukraine are relieved that the feared Russian invasion didn't materialize on Wednesday. But NATO and the US maintain that the threat is high, with Europe's security at risk.
Now, Germany will lift most COVID-19 restrictions next month. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and 16 state leaders agreed to a step-by-step plan to lift most pandemic measures. Coronavirus infections are falling, and there's also a rise in vaccinations, with almost 3/4 of the population now with at least 2 shots.
This might be the beginning of the end for most of Germany's COVID restrictions. The 3-stage plan announced on Wednesday will see nearly all measures lifted by spring. First to go will be limits on the numbers of people that can meet, and the requirements of being vaccinated or tested to enter retail spaces. Visits to restaurants and bars will then return to the so-called 3G rule of vaccinated, tested or recovered, before the remaining rules are lifted on the 20th of March. Germans welcomed the relaxation of current restrictions.
As long as everything happens gradually, it's a good idea, but you have to be careful that things don't get out of control.
I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's about time.
It seems a bit too much right now. I think you have to show the Corona pass every time you go in a store. I've never done that before, so I think it should be nice.
Following a meeting with regional leaders, Chancellor Olaf Scholz warned against thinking that the pandemic was over, but he expressed his optimism. I think it is a good step forward, because I think that somehow after 2 years we deserve for things to be better again, and it looks like that is happening now. Though cases remain high, Health Minister Karl Lauterbach said the peak of the Omicron wave is over. And after a sluggish start, Germany's vaccination rate is now almost 75%. Despite that, Scholz reaffirmed his commitment to the controversial vaccine mandate, warning a new variant could undo everything if the unvaccinated aren't jabbed by next winter.
This is DW News, live from Berlin. Up next is DocFilm, looking at mothers of the kidnapped in Yemen. There's plenty more for you on the website, dw.com, for all the latest news, analysis and video. You can also live stream us on YouTube. I'm Raheela Mahomed. Thanks for watching. See you soon.